Did you know that behind Johnny Depp's fame, fortune, and unforgettable roles, there's a hidden struggle that almost cost him everything? People know him as the man who gave us Jack Sparrow, Edward Scissorhands, Willy Wonka, and dozens of other iconic characters. He's adored, he's criticized, he's admired, and he's judged. But what most people don't really know is that beneath all the glamour, all the spotlight, and all the chaos, Johnny Depp has fought a private battle for decades. A battle with sobriety. It's one of those stories that never fully makes it to the front page. Sure, you'll hear the tabloids scream about drunken nights, failed relationships, lawsuits, and wild behavior. You'll hear the rumors about broken bottles and broken hearts. But the real story, the one that tells you who Johnny Depp is as a man, is the one that doesn't get told often. That story is complicated. It's messy. And it's painfully human. Johnny's relationship with alcohol didn't start when he became a celebrity. It started much earlier. Growing up in Owensboro, Kentucky, and later in Florida, Depp's childhood wasn't easy. His parents had a turbulent marriage, and he often described his home as a place of chaos and emotional pain. When he was just a teenager, he discovered drinking as a way to cope. To him, alcohol wasn't just something to celebrate with, it was an escape. He once admitted that he drank to numb himself, to drown out the noise inside his head and the confusion around him. Imagine being that young and already feeling like the only way to silence your pain was through a bottle. That early decision stayed with him. It wasn't just a phase. It became a pattern, and patterns are hard to break. By the time he entered Hollywood, the habit was already there, and the industry he was stepping into only made it worse. Hollywood is full of pressure. Fame comes with bright lights, constant cameras, and expectations that never let up. For some, that pressure is thrilling. For others, it's suffocating. For Depp, it became a dangerous mix. In the 1990s, Johnny was on top of the world. He was young, talented, and unlike anyone else in Hollywood. While other actors went for the typical action hero roles, Depp chose characters that were strange, offbeat, and unforgettable. He became the face of the outsider, the rebel, the man who wouldn't play by the rules. And people loved him for it. He had fans everywhere. Directors admired him. Studios wanted him. He was magnetic. But behind the curtain, the old demons were never far away. Fame gave him more access, more temptation, and more reasons to hide from the pressure. The world saw him as this mysterious, untouchable figure. The reality was very different. He was vulnerable, fragile, and quietly drowning. Rumors of drinking followed him everywhere. Some people thought it was just part of his rock star persona. The eccentric actor who loved music, hung out with famous bands, and lived life on the edge. But what many didn't see was the destruction it caused. Friends worried about him. Relationships suffered. Projects were affected. The line between the man and the myth began to blur. Hollywood has a way of glamorizing self-destruction. It makes chaos look cool. It makes brokenness look romantic. But for Johnny, there was nothing glamorous about it. It was painful. It was damaging. It was something that slowly chipped away at his relationships, his career, and his own health. For a time, it looked like he had found stability. His long relationship with French singer and actress Vanessa Paradis brought calm to his world. Together, they had 2 children, and for a while, Johnny seemed grounded. Fatherhood gave him something bigger than himself. He loved his kids deeply, and by many accounts, they were his anchor. During those years, he often spoke about how much he valued family, how important being a dad was, and how his children gave him a reason to keep going. But stability in Hollywood doesn't always last. When his relationship with Vanessa ended, the cracks in his personal life grew deeper. And when cracks appear, old habits have a way of creeping back in. His struggles with alcohol returned, and this time, they were more public than ever before. Soon, the controversies began piling up. Lawsuits, accusations, and public battles with former partners dragged every detail of his private life into the spotlight. Suddenly, his drinking wasn't just whispered about, it was on display for the entire world to see. Court cases dissected his habits. Headlines exaggerated his struggles. Everyone had an opinion, and very few had compassion. Imagine fighting one of the hardest battles of your life, while millions of strangers argue about you online. That was Johnny Depp's reality. But here's the part the tabloids often leave out. Addiction isn't just about partying. It isn't just about being careless. It isn't about wanting to be wild. Addiction is often about pain. It's about trying to silence something you can't face. It's about numbing wounds that never fully healed. Depp once said that drinking was his way of shutting off the emptiness inside him. That emptiness didn't disappear just because he was rich or famous. Fame can give you attention, but it doesn't fill the spaces inside you that hurt. If anything, it makes them harder to hide. And yet, what many people don't know is that Johnny Depp has tried, really, genuinely tried, to find sobriety. For someone on the outside looking in, it might be easy to say, well, if he wanted to stop, he could just stop. But anyone who's lived with addiction, or even loved someone who has, knows it doesn't work that way. Addiction isn't a switch you can turn off. It's not about willpower alone. It's about rewiring your entire way of living, your habits, your coping mechanisms, and sometimes even your identity. And for Depp, the process has never been simple. Over the years, he has spoken openly about moments when he gave up alcohol completely. Times when he looked at his life, his family, his work, and decided, I can't keep going down this road. And when he made those decisions, it wasn't just words. People close to him noticed the effort. There were stretches where he avoided drinking, where he tried to live clean, where he leaned more into his art, his children, and his music. For him, those things weren't just passions, they were lifelines. They gave him reasons to wake up, to keep moving, to focus on something bigger than the bottle. He's admitted to mistakes. He's admitted to the ways drinking has hurt his relationships and his career. That honesty matters, because in a world where celebrities often try to paint a perfect picture, Depp has at least acknowledged the cracks. He hasn't denied them, hasn't pretended they didn't exist. He's acknowledged the damage, and that's something people rarely give him credit for. But here's the hard truth about sobriety. It isn't a one-time victory. It isn't about winning a single battle and walking away free. It's not like beating an opponent and then never having to face them again. Sobriety is a war that restarts every single morning. You wake up, and the first choice of the day is often the hardest, to stay sober today, or to slip back into old patterns. That choice doesn't get easier just because you've been sober for a week, or a month, or even years. Sometimes, it gets harder. Because the temptation, the memory of the relief alcohol brings, never really leaves you. For someone like Depp, that challenge is even more intense. Because his life isn't private. Every stumble, every relapse, every mistake gets magnified by 1,000. Imagine trying to heal, trying to build a new life, while millions of people are watching you, waiting for you to slip, ready to judge you the second you do. That's the reality he's faced for decades. Think about how different it is for most people. If someone you know is struggling with drinking, maybe only their family and friends are aware of it. If they fall off the wagon, it hurts, but it stays contained within a small circle. But when you're Johnny Depp, if you relapse, the whole world knows. Headlines scream it. Social media amplifies it. Tabloids twist it into something even worse. And suddenly, what should have been a private, personal battle becomes public entertainment. How do you heal when the world won't let you? How do you rebuild when every attempt gets picked apart, every mistake gets broadcast, and every relapse is treated like proof that you'll never change? That's the pressure Johnny has lived under. And that pressure doesn't just make sobriety harder, it makes it exhausting. There have been times when his attempts at sobriety lined up with the most important moments of his life. Becoming a father, for instance, was a huge turning point. By many accounts, his children were the strongest motivators for him to step away from drinking. He's spoken about how much they mean to him, how fatherhood gave him purpose. In those years, he tried to focus more on being present, on giving them the stability he didn't always have himself growing up. And for a while, it worked. Fatherhood gave him something to fight for. But life has a way of testing even the strongest reasons to stay sober. When his relationship with Vanessa Paradis ended, the stability he had built around his family started to fracture. Without that anchor, the old habits crept back in. That's something people often overlook. Sobriety is fragile. It's tied to structure, to routine, to support systems. When those supports collapse, the risk of relapse skyrockets. For Johnny, the end of that relationship was one of those moments where the walls caved in. Later came the lawsuits, the controversies, the trials that put every detail of his private life under a microscope. During those years, any struggle he had with alcohol became public evidence. Lawyers brought it up. Journalists analyzed it. Commentators debated it. People who had never met him, never spoken to him, suddenly had strong opinions about his most personal battle. And all of that noise only made the fight harder. Here's something most people don't realize: addiction often feeds on shame. The more someone feels judged, the more they feel misunderstood, the more likely they are to retreat back into the very habits they're trying to escape. For Depp, the constant scrutiny wasn't just stressful, it was toxic. Imagine trying to stand up after falling, only to be shoved back down by the weight of public opinion. But even with all of that, he didn't stop trying. That's the part that makes his story worth telling. He didn't give up. He kept making genuine attempts to turn things around. Sometimes he succeeded for stretches of time. Sometimes he fell back. But he always got up again. That persistence, even in the face of failure, shows resilience. It shows that he understood the stakes. That he knew sobriety wasn't about perfection, it was about the fight. And if you really think about it, isn't that what makes his story so human? None of us are perfect. We all have battles, habits, or struggles that we fight again and again. Maybe for you it's not alcohol. Maybe it's something else. But the idea of waking up every day and having to face the same challenge over and over, that's something everyone can relate to on some level. For Depp, the challenge is magnified because he doesn't just fight it privately. He fights it publicly. And that's why his story isn't just about one man's addiction. It's about how the world treats people who are struggling. It's about how we judge them, how we label them, how we sometimes forget they're human at all. When you look at his journey, you start to realize sobriety isn't about a finish line. It's not about crossing a mark and saying, "I've made it." It's about endurance. It's about walking a road that never really ends. And for Johnny, that road has been harder than most of us could ever imagine. Friends and colleagues have quietly tried to help him. Some pushed him toward healthier choices. Others simply stood by his side when he needed support. Many believe that his recent return to music, especially performing with Jeff Beck, wasn't just a career move, it was therapy. Music gave him an outlet. It gave him a place to pour his emotions without judgment. On stage, with a guitar in his hands, he found a kind of escape that didn't destroy him. Experts say that for people battling addiction, privacy is one of the most important parts of recovery. But for Johnny, privacy is nearly impossible. Imagine trying to heal when every move you make becomes a headline. Imagine relapsing and knowing the entire world is going to talk about it the next morning. That kind of pressure is enough to break anyone. And yet, despite everything, Depp is still here. He's still working, still creating, still standing. That survival alone is powerful. Because his story isn't just about falling, it's about fighting. It's about resilience. It's about facing demons that never truly go away and still finding a way to keep going. In many ways, Johnny's fight with sobriety shaped his entire career. The highs, the lows, the unforgettable performances, all of it carries the weight of the man behind the mask. The vulnerability you see in his characters often reflects the vulnerability he lives with in real life. Maybe that's why his roles feel so raw, so real. Because they come from a place of truth. When you think about his most famous characters, you start to see the patterns. Captain Jack Sparrow, for example, wasn't just a funny, eccentric pirate. He was unpredictable, charming, and broken all at once. He staggered across the screen with wit and charisma, but beneath the humor, there was always a hint of pain. That wasn't just acting. That was Johnny channeling something real. He once admitted that Jack Sparrow was partly based on himself, with bits of his personality magnified and exaggerated. The stumbling, the chaotic energy, it came from a place he understood too well. It came from living on the edge of control, where the line between brilliance and destruction is thin. Then there's Edward Scissorhands. A character so lonely, so misunderstood, yet so full of heart that he makes the audience ache with empathy. Depp brought an intensity to Edward that made him more than just a fantasy figure. Edward's isolation reflected Johnny's own struggles with feeling like an outsider, with not fitting in, with hiding parts of himself behind walls. You can feel it in every silent expression, every nervous glance, every heartbreaking scene. That kind of depth doesn't come from pretending. It comes from carrying real wounds. Even in movies that seem lighter, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, his version of Willy Wonka was far from a cheerful candy man. He played him with a strangeness, a discomfort that made the character unsettling, almost haunted. Some critics didn't understand it, but for those who looked closely, it was Depp once again pouring his inner unease into his work. His characters were never just performances, they were pieces of himself. And that's the thing about his career. The highs were extraordinary, Oscar nominations, box office hits, cultural icons. But the lows were just as visible. There were roles where he seemed distant, performances where critics said he wasn't fully there, moments where his personal battles seeped into his professional work. Sobriety, or the lack of it, shaped not only who he was off-screen but also what he was capable of bringing on-screen. Some of his most praised roles came during times when he was wrestling hardest with himself. The vulnerability audiences connected with wasn't manufactured, it was lived. Maybe that's why people feel so connected to him, even when his personal life has been messy, even when headlines have been brutal. Because when he's on screen, you can feel that he isn't hiding. He's giving you pieces of his real self, his scars, his struggles, his emotions. And that's what makes his performances unforgettable. They're not perfect, polished, or safe. They're raw. They're human. They come from a man who knows what it feels like to hurt, to fall, and to keep standing anyway. And here's something worth watching. Depp has hinted that he may one day open up even more about his struggles. If he does, it could shift the conversation, not just about him, but about addiction itself. Imagine the impact if one of Hollywood's most beloved actors spoke openly about the realities of sobriety, relapse, and healing. It could inspire millions. It could break the stigma. It could make people see that addiction doesn't just belong to other people. It touches everyone, even those who seem larger than life. So how do we look at Johnny Depp's story? Is it one of weakness? Or is it one of survival? Maybe it's both. Maybe it shows us that even the strongest, most admired people can struggle. That having fans doesn't mean you don't feel alone. That wealth doesn't erase pain. And that fame doesn't heal wounds. Maybe Depp's survival through it all is more inspiring than any character he's ever played. Because Jack Sparrow might be unforgettable, Edward Scissorhands might be iconic, but Johnny Depp, the man who's still here, still fighting, still surviving, that might be the greatest story of all. What do you think? Do you see Johnny Depp's battle with sobriety as a failure, or do you see it as resilience? Leave your thoughts, because your perspective could help someone else who's watching. And if you've been through something similar, your story matters too. Before you go, there's another side to Depp's journey you might want to hear. Check out my video on Johnny Depp's most emotional confession, it connects directly to everything we talked about today. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who still believes that fame equals happiness. Because Johnny Depp's journey proves something important, sometimes the hardest battles are the ones nobody sees.